State, do you wish to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'm going to need the overhead.
All right, the court deputy will set it up for you.
Thank you. And does the court have the laser pointer?
The laser pointer would be, I believe, with the clerk.
All right. Thank you very much. First of all, let me wish everyone good morning. This is 2112 Sultan Sar. As you can see, it's a nice house. It's a big house, and it's on a lot of property. There are over 20 windows in that house. None of them are broken. None of them have any pry marks on them, nor show any signs of any type of forced entry. There are 5 doors to that house. None of them have any broken locks or latches, any broken or smashed door frames, nor any sign of a forced entry. Inside the house, there are several televisions, several expensive gaming systems, sound systems, valuable computers, 3 safes, and other valuable items, including jewelry. Nothing was taken nor missing from the house. No signs of any type of home invasion, burglary, nor robbery. Inside that house, depicted in that photograph, are the dead bodies of Margaret Amato, Chad Amato, and Cody Amato, each shot through the head execution style. Margaret Amato. This thing is not working. Margaret Amato, as you can see, she's sitting in a chair. She's slumped over at her computer desk in front of her computer with her face down on her keyboard. Margaret was the defendant's mother. Chad Amato, as you can see right there, there's Margaret. Chad Amato is laying on his back, face up in the kitchen. Chad was the defendant's, Grant Amato's, father. A good way to memorize or to connect the two is Chad is dad. Chad is Grant Amato's father. Was Chad Grant Amato's father. Cody Amato, on the top there, is laying on his side in a fetal position at the threshold of the door of the house that connects the house part to the garage. Cody was the defendant's brother. Through the examination of Margaret's computer, e-pass toll records, surveillance video, phone records, witness testimony, a reliable timeline will be presented to you as to when each victim was shot in the head. Margaret was the first one to die. She was sitting at her computer desk, when she was shot in the left back side of the head with the bullet coming out her right cheek. The last human activity that took place on that computer occurred at 4:44 p.m. At 4 p.m., a call was made from the landline at the home, at that house, to a conference call service. 4 p.m., the time of that teleconference call, and 4:44 p.m., the time of the last human activity on that computer, took place before Chad and Cody arrived home from work. You'll see from the e-pass toll records for Chad and Cody, from the work time records for Chad, or surveillance video for Chad, and also witness testimony for Cody, that Margaret was shot and she was dead at her computer desk the late afternoon of January 24th, 2019, before Chad and Cody arrived home. Chad was the second one to die. He was shot once behind his right ear in the back of his head as he was standing in the kitchen shortly after he gets home from work. That first shot, Chad was shot twice in the head. That first shot occurs approximately 5:25, 5:30 that evening. Chad falls down after the first shot gets him behind the ear and literally goes through the side of his head. He falls down, he crawls around the kitchen counter to where he shot a second time in the back of his head, execution style. How do we know this? Once again, I'm referring to Chad now. How do we know this? Well, a combination of evidence that's going to be presented to you. Chad's iPhone almost exactly shows what Chad was doing when he left work until the time that he arrived at home, which includes how many steps he took when he got home and walked into the house. He had one of those applications. When he took those steps and the number of those steps that he took. Chad's e-pass records show him going through the Dean Road Toll Plaza, eastbound on the road, Highway 408, at 5:02 p.m. on his way home. His e-pass records. The crime scene photos that you're going to see shows a smearing of blood from where Chad was first shot to where he crawled around the kitchen counter and where he was shot a second time in the back of the head. The bullets were recovered, and you'll see that the first shot was recovered from an upper kitchen cabinet where Chad was standing when he was first struck. The second bullet strikes Chad in the back of the head as he's face down, goes through his head, and strikes the kitchen tile. Chad's lunch box or bag or container, you'll see photographs of it, which is lying on the kitchen floor right next to Chad right next to the kitchen counter, is the location where he was first shot behind the ear. And you'll see Chad wearing the same clothing, laying dead on the kitchen floor with that lunchbox nearby as he was wearing when he left work at approximately 4:30 that afternoon. From that surveillance video that I expect you're going to see, with that same lunchbox or container that he was carrying. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to talk about the evidence concerning the activity on Chad's phone. Activity that occurred both while Chad was still alive, by Chad, and activity that occurred on Chad's phone after he was dead by the defendant. Cody was the third and the last one to die. On January 24, 2019, Cody leaves work at approximately 9:15 that evening. Cody worked at ORMC as a nurse anesthetist. You'll hear the testimony of a friend of Cody, a co-worker also, Christopher Sisko, co-worker and friend of Cody, that Cody left work that evening at approximately 9:15 on January 24th. Cody's E-Pass toll records show him going through the Dean Road Toll Plaza eastbound on the way home on the Highway 408 at 9:36 p.m. Moments later, Cody arrives home. He parks his vehicle under a makeshift kind of like carport, tents that are on the property, and I expect you'll see photographs of this, tents that are on the property that kind of serve as a makeshift carport. There's also a garage that has two cars in it, but Cody parks under that tent that's near the house. He gets out of his car. He enters the house through the garage, enters the threshold of the door that connects that garage to the house, as depicted in that diagram on the top there. And as he enters the threshold, he's shot once in the face immediately below his right eye, with the bullet going right through his head and out the back of his head. The bullet's going from front to back, from his right to left, and slightly downward. And Cody is found in a fetal position at the threshold of that door. And you'll just see photographs of all this. But the way the bodies of Chad and Cody, the way they were found by the police the morning of Friday, January 25th, and as depicted in those crime scene photographs, the scene photographs that I expect you're going to see, is not the way the bodies were positioned immediately after Grant Amato shot and killed them on January 24th, 2019. What the defendant did in this case is he staged a murder-suicide scene. And in order to do that, he planted certain items of evidence at the scene to give the appearance of a murder-suicide. I'm going to talk about that, of course, in a few moments. But what I first want to do is I want to explain to you the background regarding how the bodies of Margaret, Chad, and Cody were discovered by the police. Chris Cisco, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is Cody's co-worker and a friend. He got concerned when Cody did not show up for work the morning of Friday, January 25th. Cody was very punctual, always on time for work, and he never missed work. So what Chris Cisco did was, being concerned, he called the police and he expressed his concerns. And he asked that a well-being check be done on Cody's home. And the Seminole County Sheriff's Office did, in fact, go to 2112 Sultan Circle and do a well-being check. Deputies Todd Moterson with the Sheriff's Office and Brent Matre, they went to the house. And after being unable to make any contact with anybody inside the house, they received permission to enter the house and did, in fact, enter the house. Upon entering the house, they discovered the dead bodies of Margaret, Chad, and Cody. Originally, you'll see that they thought that Chad was the defendant in this case. They thought that Chad was Grant Amato. But in fact, it was Chad Amato. He's, once again, Chad, the dad, he's the one who was, the victim was lying in the kitchen. But at first, they thought that Chad was Grant Amato. You'll hear the testimony of Todd Moterson. You'll see his body camera video as they entered and discovered the bodies of Margaret, Chad, and Cody. And you'll see the photographs of the scene and the bodies as they were first found or discovered by deputies Moterson and Matre. So that's the background to how the bodies were discovered. There were 3 items of evidence that the defendant, Grant Amato, planted to make it appear that Cody killed his mother and father and then killed himself. What he did was, he placed a handgun near Cody's body and 4 shell casings in the vicinity of each body to correspond to the number of wounds. Remember, there are 2 gunshot wounds to Chad and 1 each to the heads of Margaret and Cody. He also placed a holster with a gun on it on Chad's right hip underneath Chad's belt to make it appear that there was some kind of confrontation between Cody and Chad that required Chad to arm himself. I'm now going to explain to you the evidence that will show that these items are planted. And in conjunction with the other evidence in this case, that I'll talk about in a few moments, that it was the defendant who planted these items of evidence. Four shell casings. The 4 shell casings that were found in the house match the gun that was found near Cody. Those shell casings were ejected from that gun. So it would appear, obviously, that that was the gun that Cody used to kill his mother, kill his father, and then kill himself. Or so it would appear. That's what Grant Amato would like it to appear. But it's wrong. And the reason why we know it's wrong is because of this. The 4 bullets, once again, distinguish the shell casings from the bullets, the projectiles. The 4 bullets that killed Margaret, Chad, and Cody, and found and recovered at the scene, were not fired from that gun. They were not fired from the gun that was near Cody. The gun that killed the defendant's family has never been found. A FDLE, a Florida Department of Law Enforcement expert, Richard Ruth, will tell you, he's going to testify in this case obviously, that the 4 shell casings that were found in the house were in fact ejected from the gun found near Cody, but the bullets that were recovered that killed the victims were not fired from that gun. The gun that was found near Cody was excluded as firing those 4 bullets that killed Margaret, Chad, and Cody. Those 4 shell casings were planted there. They were put there. Those 4 shell casings are not part of the bullet. You know, by no means an expert. You will hear the testimony of an expert, but you have the bullet. You have the shell casings and you have the projectile. The shell casings did not match, were not part of the same bullet. Those bullets are going to be excluded as having been fired from the gun found near Cody. They were planted there. They were put there. The third item that was planted, in addition to the gun found near Cody and the 4 shell casings, is the holster containing the gun found on Chad's belt. There was a holster, and once again, you're going to see photographs of these. There was a holster that was found on Chad's right hip. In that holster was a gun. Well, you're going to hear testimony and evidence that Chad is right-handed. The evidence is going to show that everything that Chad did was right-handed. The holstered gun was placed on Chad's hip, backward, for a right-handed shooter. This is a toy gun. That holster was on his right side, and it was like this. Additionally, a spot of blood was found on Chad's pants underneath the holster, and I emphasize underneath the holster. The significance of that is obvious, but it will be explained during closing arguments. And the medical examiner is going to testify. The medical examiner is going to tell you that all 4 of those shots, including the one that killed Cody, was not a close-range shot. It was not a close-range shot. It was from a distance. If a person's going to kill themselves, it's going to be closer, and you're going to get the powder burns on the head. The medical examiner is going to tell you that these are not close-range shots. Cody did not kill himself. It was not a suicide. Now, regarding the positions of Chad's and Cody's body when they were found versus the position of their bodies when they were shot, they were moved. And let me explain to you why the evidence is going to show that. In addition to the back right ear, the shot to the Chad's back right ear, Chad was also shot in the back of the head. It went right through his head. You're going to see the damage that was done to the kitchen tile when the bullet went through his head and struck the kitchen tile. Chad's body was found on his back, and it was found 2 feet, maybe 3 feet to the left of the damage to the tile made by that bullet that went through the back of his head and into the tile in the kitchen. He was flipped over on his back after he was shot in the back of the head while he was laying face down on the tile. The medical examiner is going to tell you that bullet went through the back of his head, and you're going to see the damage to the tile. So he was face down when that bullet went through his head, and then he was flipped over, and you'll see the damage to the tile. You'll see the position of his body on the back with that holster in the reverse position on the right side, and you'll see that his body is to the side of the damage done to the tile by the bullet that went through his head. So he was flipped over. You'll also see from the evidence that Cody's body was not in its original position when he was discovered by Deputies Moterson and Matre. He was shot, clearly he was shot, that you'll see from the evidence, and went down at that garage slash, house door where the garage connects into the house. But you'll see from the evidence that while his body was found at that threshold, it was moved a foot or two from where he fell. You'll see from the photographs and a discussion of those photographs during closing argument why it's very apparent and evident that his body was moved. And finally, with respect to Cody's body, you'll see from the evidence that when Cody was shot, that door that leads from the house into the garage, it was open. Yet you'll see when the deputies arrived, and you'll see this in the body camera video, when the deputies arrived, that door was closed when they discovered Cody's body. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the evidence with you that shows that the defendant in this case, Grant Amato, was in that house for hours with the dead bodies of Margaret, Chad, and Cody. Grant Amato was in that house with the dead bodies of his mother, father, and brother for at least 2.5 hours. You're going to see evidence that puts him in the house probably longer. But for at least 2.5 hours, he was in that house with those 3 dead bodies. Once again, remember, Cody was the last one to die. Cody passed through that Dean Road toll plaza on his way home at 9:36 p.m., and he arrived at his home shortly thereafter. You'll see from a map that the house that Chuliote is not that far from that toll plaza. Cody walks into his house and through the threshold of that door approximately 10 p.m. You'll see that he still has his work scrubs on. You'll see that he still has his badge, his work badge that's on his chest. So he's clearly coming home from work. Grant Amato's car, a few days later, was searched. Grant Amato was located on January 26th. Now, this is all to show you how we put him in that house for at least 2.5 hours with the 3 dead bodies. Grant Amato was located on January 26th, just 2 days after the murders. A search of his car was conducted, and in his car, his pants were found. And in his pants was a flash drive. Transferred onto that flash drive were the contents, the data of a computer that was located in Grant Amato's room at 2112 Sultan Circle. And most critically, after the data was transferred, you unplug the flash drive from the computer. That flash drive was unplugged from that computer at 12:27 a.m. Friday, January 25th. The defendant was in that house at least until 12:27 a.m. As I said, there's going to be evidence presented to you that puts him in there longer. But he was in that house until at least 12:27 a.m. the following morning, January 25th. At 12:08 a.m. on January 25th, more than 6 hours after he kills his father, Chad, he, the defendant, accesses his father's USA bank account using his dead father's iPhone. At 12:08 a.m. on January 25th, 2019, Chad's iPhone, his iPhone USA application, was accessed to add an account on for funds transfer. You access your account and you can add on to that account another fund to which you can transfer money. Well, at 12:08 on January 25th, Chad's iPhone, was accessed. His USA bank account app was accessed to add an account for funds transfer. The account that was added for funds transfer was the defendant's PNC bank checking account. The defendant was in Chad's USA app for 12 minutes. You'll see that through the forensic examination of Chad's iPhone that was done by the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, and through the USAA and PNC bank records. You'll see Chad's bank records from USAA, and you'll see the defendant's bank records from PNC. And you'll see that an account was added for funds transfer onto Chad's USAA account. Once again, that was done hours after Chad's murder. Now, on January 26, when the defendant was located, he agreed to give an interview with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office investigators in this case. And to be sure, and you'll see it during that interview, he denies responsibility for hurting his family. In that interview with the police that was conducted on January 26th, the defendant admits to being home all day with his mother. He also admits to being home when his father, Chad, gets home. The defendant says that this occurred 5:30, 5:45 in the evening on January 24th, 2019. And he also admits to being home when Cody got home. Grant Amato, the defendant, says that that occurred at around 10:30 in the evening. By the way, after lying to the police that he met Cody down the road or down the street from the house, and he also admits during that interview going onto his computer to back up some stuff, and that's his words, to back up some stuff onto flash drives. And remember that that flash drive was unplugged from his computer at 12:27 a.m. that early Friday morning. Not once during that police interview, remember it's about 4 hours long, not once did that police interview did he ask about his family or ask them why he was there and why they were talking to him and questioning him. Immediately after being interviewed by the lead investigator in the case, Danny Anderson, and Danny Anderson is going to testify in this case, the defendant's brother, Jason Amato, is allowed into the interview room and has a conversation with the defendant. During that conversation, the defendant claims that he had nothing to do with hurting his family. But when Jason indirectly, and at one point, and you'll see it pretty much directly, accuses him of being responsible for the family's death, the defendant doesn't deny it. He was home alone with his mother all day when the last human activity occurs on a computer. He was home when his father, Chad, arrives home from work. And he was home when his brother, Cody, arrives home from work. All by his own admission. And in order to kind of set the stage for his murder-suicide story, when he's asked by one of the investigators, he's asked this question: what do you think happened to bring law enforcement to your home? The defendant, unprompted, his answer was that there was a shooting between Cody and my dad. And when asked why, his response was, Cody was protecting me or helping me or something with me. To give the appearance of a murder-suicide, the defendant on some other occasion fired 4 shots from Cody's gun, and you'll see that they had guns in the house. He was familiar with guns. You'll see that from the evidence. Actually all 3, Grant, Amato, Cody, and Chad. To give the appearance of that murder-suicide, the defendant on some other occasion fired 4 shots from Cody's gun, collected the shell casings, and then placed him throughout the house. After killing his mother, father, and brother with another gun, he plants those 4 shell casings in the vicinity of each body, and then he places the gun that matches those shell casings near Cody. Cody's gun did not kill them, did not kill Margaret, Chad, nor himself. Once again, those 4 bullets, those 4 projectiles that were recovered were excluded from having been fired from that gun that was found near Cody. And to further that contrived murder-suicide scenario, he places that holstered gun on Chad's right side. But once again, you'll see that it's placed in a position that would not be appropriate for a right-handed person and a right-handed shooter. And once again, you'll see that it was placed there after the shooting, by that blood being underneath that holster. The gloves. There are gloves in this case. The defendant was located at a hotel in Orlando on January 26th, as I mentioned, just 2 days after the murder. Found in that hotel, among other items in possession of the defendant, were a pair of black leather gloves. You'll see that these are not what are called range gloves, kind of gloves that you would use at a shooting range. They're not those kind of gloves. These are just regular cold weather, black leather gloves. On the outside of those gloves is gunshot residue. On the outside of the gloves, gunshot residue. On the inside of the gloves, on the cuffs of the gloves, is what is called wearer DNA, the defendant's DNA. Gunshot residue on the outside of those gloves, the defendant's DNA on the inside, on the cuffs on the inside. A 1 in 700 billion chance it's someone else's DNA. Now you're going to see other evidence in this case that puts those gloves on Grant Amato's hands. In December of 2018, he went on a trip to Japan. He went with his brother Cody and a friend by the name of Jericho Fine. Jericho Fine is going to testify in this case. And he will identify those gloves as appearing to be the same gloves that were found in the hotel room with Grant Amato that had the gunshot residue on the outside and the DNA on the inside, his DNA on the inside. And you'll see photographs of them in Japan. And those photographs will include photographs of Grant Amato wearing gloves that appear to be those same gloves. Now also note that when the defendant was interviewed by the sheriff's office on January 26th, he completely divorced himself from all guns. I got rid of all of my guns a while ago, and we can confirm that because you're also going to see evidence that in August of 2018, on 2 separate occasions, and you'll see the records from the Florida Gun Exchange in Ormond Beach, that Grant Amato sold them a significant number of guns, both handguns and rifles. So he completely divorced himself from firearms, completely separated himself from them. But yet you have the gunshot residue and the DNA on those black gloves. But why? What was his motive? Why did he kill his family? The answer to that question lies and will be found across the ocean in Bulgaria and a woman named Sylvie, if that's her real name. Grant Amato was and is obsessed with this woman. Sylvie is an internet cam model. I put quotation marks around the word model, working from Bulgaria. The defendant, Grant Amato, became addicted to her, consumed with her, possessed by her, to the point that he was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of the family's money on her. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to, quote, be with her on her internet website. And he presented to her a persona that was not who he really was. A professional gamer, owned his own home, drove a BMW. That's what the persona was that he presented himself to her. And when his parents found out about his, quote, relationship with Sylvie, and the tremendous amounts of money that he was spending on her, they contacted her and they let her know the lies that he was telling her and who he really was. And that effectively ended his relationship with Sylvie. Sylvie now knew that Grant Amato was not a professional gamer, did not own his own house, did not drive a BMW. And to Grant Amato, that was the end of the world. There was nothing to live for. And he was furious with his family for ending his world, his life as he believed it to exist. But how do we know this? How do we know that? Well, Grant Amato told us this. On January 22nd, 2019, just 2 days before the murder, before murdering his family. Grant Amato typed an 8-page letter on his computer to 6 other men that were in that internet virtual room that interacted with Sylvie. Jim, Josh, Ian, Sven, Frank, and Wolf. In the letter, which I expect that you're going to see, the defendant details his obsession with Sylvie, the lies he told her and told the group, and his contempt for his family for revealing to Sylvie that he was not who he portrayed himself to be. And how life, as he knows it, is over, that Sylvie now knows that he's not who he put himself out to be. The letter contains the following, and it's typed on his computer 2 days before murdering his family. I lied to her and you guys from the beginning about myself. I'm not a professional gamer, did not own my own house, and did not drive a BMW. I felt intimidated from the onset of the room environment and felt like I had to be something far more unique than I was. My family found out about her, the website, and all the money I had been spending on everything. They would not have this and subsequently ambushed, put quotation marks around the ambush, they would not, that he did, Grant Amato, they would not have this and subsequently ambushed me where I was staying and forcefully signed me into a clinic in Fort Lauderdale here in Florida. The clinic's name was Cornerstone, if anyone was interested. This was an addiction clinic. They felt that I had an unhealthy addiction because of the type of profession Sylvie has and the quantity of money that I had spent in the span of 6 months that I had known her. I was not allowed to leave the clinic, while I was there, I was not allowed to access to the internet. I did not have access to my phone. I did not have access to my computer. I was admitted in there until I was able to convince my family that I was fine and able to be released on January 9th. By this time, the damage was done. My family had hacked my computer at home, gained access to my phone records, and all my personal things related to Sylvie. They then took it upon themselves to lie to her about so many things related to me, which in turn led her to believe me even less after I finally came clean to her about the lies I told you above. I should mention the stipulation for me to be released from the clinic was to go along with the lies my family had told her to poison my image that much more. While Sylvie says that the reason why she can't forgive me is solely because of what I did, I can't help but feel that it is all part of it. Further, in this 8-page typed out letter, he says, I will never be able to forgive myself for making Sylvie sad and betraying her trust in me. I care for her deeply and wish for an actual second chance with her and the room. I am willing to do whatever it takes to be able to show the real, with quotation marks around the real me to anyone and to build a relationship that doesn't involve lies. Everything between me and Sylvie grew so fast. I hate myself for what I did, and I hate the thought of never getting to be with her again. After everything that I gave and everything that I tried to do with her, I just can't comprehend being without her. I am unable to function normally without her. Not hearing her good mornings or good nights. Not talking to her for hours a day. Not being a part of her room and her life outside of it. It's the most painful experience I've ever been through, and I will never get out it. I will never get over her, and I never plan to simply replace her with the next one. I truly love this woman at first sight, and I fell in love with her over the months that I got to know everything about her. She never believed that you could love someone so fast, but I did. I was part of everything to do with her, and now I'm reduced down to only being able to send her DM direct messages on her public Twitter. No private Twitter, no phone number, nothing. I send her messages every day, and I rarely get a response from her. Seeing her be able to be so happy without me in her life is something I hope you guys never have to live through. It's a feeling that makes you wish you did not exist in this world. It's a feeling that rips your heart out and makes you realize how pointless everything is without her. It makes you give up on life, as I have without her. I don't think you guys would ever be as stupid as I was, but don't ever lose her. Don't ever do anything against her. And towards the end of that 8-page typed out letter, he says, I can't give up on her, and I will never, and the word never in capital letters, never go to someone else. She is my everything, and I will give her my life to simply be able to make her smile again. Don't ever lose her, guys. She is someone that you will never forget and never want to forget, no matter how painful. I hope I can be with her again. I'm sorry for what I did to her and to you. I'm truly sorry. Grant Amato was so obsessed with this woman. You're going to see from the evidence in this case, at 2:53 a.m. on January 25th, after leaving the house that contained the 3 dead bodies of his family, the defendant goes to a nearby Publix parking lot, logs onto their Wi-Fi, and uses his dead brother's USA checking account to pay $599.99 to get onto Sylvie's website at 3:02 in the morning. That's how obsessed he was with that woman. That's what this case is about. It's about his blind obsession with this woman, the end of the world as he believed it to be because of his family, and his absolute contempt for those that he held responsible. That's what this case is about. Thank you.
Is the defense planning on making an